Namaste.
So Ramana, back this season, we have John Roberts from the USA,
Done.
Eva Norby from Denmark,
Yeah.
and Vera Esbert from Denmark as well.
Well, happy to have you back. Fabian, good to see you. And everyone. So is anything happening with anyone since we were last together? Anything of any particular importance or significance that you would like to share? I tend to be more and more into the stillness, just abiding in awareness as awareness, since I live in the realization awareness is all really there is. Forms of things just are appearances. That which sustains the form is itself not real, it's just appearance. That's been my realization for a number of years. And it tends to draw me more and more back into the abidance of only, just in abidance, living in as awareness, observing awareness as it appears to change its form in what we call events of life. But this appearance is what has often been called the play, the dance, the lila, different words that mean what is appearing to be, yet the essence of what is just this one pure being that we all are. To what extent we have awakened to and realized this pure essence and are able to see everything from and as this pure essence, then what is appearing to be, by our not identifying with it, but just observing it and watching it, cannot affect us. In the home we say it's not necessary to suffer. It's unfortunate, in a manner of speaking, that the majority of people in the world do not recognize this. Situations and conditions being as they are, the to say the changes that are appearing and occurring in the apparent world, being as they are, appear to be the cause of difficulties, concerns, worries for so many. It's actually always been this way. It's just that conditions change as circumstances do, as events do. But to what extent we are not identified with the outer form of things, but are able to abide in the heart and core of being itself, in the essence of being itself, then there's no problem, no matter what the appearance might be. There's no problem. Are we able to see this? To what extent we're able to see this and live from and as this, we can say that freedom and peace and joy can be our experience. Does anyone have anything to the contrary? That's about the way I see it. And we here in Aham, in this ashram, as well as at our center in America, are dedicated to bringing people into this realization for themselves who are ready and willing, open and receptive to such an insight for themselves. Freedom, peace, and joy is what we have to share. It's really very simple. When we cease identification with the body and the mind, a sense of I, me, my, and mine, which worldly people tend to identify with. So when a person is ready to be free, free of the difficulties, the apparent problems, limitations, concerns, it is possible. But it does require coming into an alignment with the way it really is, to what's really so, to that which is as it actually is, and to cease identifying with what we may have been identified with that is not really the way it is. The real problem is that we have been identifying with what's not real as though it's real, with what's not so as though it's so, and that's the big problem. If you have a problem, I'm not trying to create a problem for anyone. It's a matter of where are you and what do you see to be the form or pattern, if any, of your life. Is that rain? Is that a problem? So does anyone have anything you would like to share or any question regarding with what Aham is about? Yes.
Aham, I know that it's a abbreviation of AHE. Is it also referring to a state which is in between the waking state and the deep sleep state, and or stepping stone state to the free state?
You'll have to excuse me. I have this hearing defect and I don't hear very well. Jen, you did.
Well, let him try again, but the first thing he said was he knows that AHAM is the acronym AHAM is the acronym for the Association of Happiness.
Okay.
But he's also looking at the other meaning of AHAM.
Okay.
Try again, it's louder there.
Yes, is this referring to a state which is a stepping stone state?
A stepping stone stage.
Between the ignorant state and the enlightened state.
Between the ignorant and
the enlightened state.
Enlightened state. Well, awareness is before anything else is. What usually is the situation is that most people who are first identified with their body and their mind, seeing everything through the senses of the body by means of the mind, recognize things to act the world of time and space as though that's the basis of reality. Now, that's not the basis of reality, that's the basis of appearance. That's how things appear to be. So, Aham, yes, is an acronym for this recognition of the self as being the true nature of what is soul, of what we really are. The true self is pure awareness. Bhagavan Ramana shared with the world the very practical and very functional process by which one can awaken to and directly abide in the pure awareness of being, the self. And that's the process of inquiry. In Sanskrit, Atmavachara, inquiring into the true nature of the sense of I by following it inward to the source out of which the sense of I takes rise. Now, when one makes this quest, this inner quest, one comes to eventually realize that the sense of I, which is identified with usually as I in English, and I only speak English, I'm sorry, I don't speak any other language. The sense of I, me, my, and mine is a meditation that we are actually doing, the meditation of a separate self-identity. When we meditate this separate self-identity by identifying with the body as though that's who and what we are, seeing through the senses of the body by means of the mind, that's the mind that forms all the patterns of perception into persons, places, things, events, and situations that we call this world. Time and space that we call this world. And that's the ego that does it. The mind being the ego that actually forms and sustains and maintains this pattern of life that we call this world of time and space. Following this sense of I back to where it takes rise in consciousness, it is possible to simply let go into and surrender the sense of I back into the very awareness out of which it is appearing. And that's all that it is. It's just an appearance. For awareness is what we actually are. This constant illumination that shines as pure existence, pure being, pure consciousness, the sense of I am, or the awareness that is I am. Now, this I am awareness actually is even before the thought of I am can be. If we didn't have the actual existence of I am as our being, we would not even be capable of the thought of I am. So this recognition by following the sense of I with inquiry that Sri Bhagavan Ramana has shared with the world, following it inward and staying with this process constantly, with every experience that rises, with every thought that rises and wishes to take form. The moment the sense of I gives rise to a form, if we just return attention back to the sourcing essence, and with the inquiry or with the redirection of attention back onto the sourcing essence itself, we can remain in this pure awareness as this pure awareness, and eventually the pattern and tendency to externalize consciousness into the manifestation of a separate self-identity appearing in time and space will cease. Not that the self ceases, the self is infinite and eternal. The pure being that we are is infinite and eternal. But the sense of I is temporary. The world itself that rises out of the sense of I is also temporary. It only appears to be. It's not an actuality. It is an appearance. And when we begin to see this and come into a deeper understanding of this, it no longer has the pull of taking us into identification with time and space and the world of objects or persons, places, and things, and we become free of that compulsiveness of body-mind identification. And then we're able to let go of this sense of ownership of the body and the mind as though that's who and what we are, and fall free into the pure awareness. And that freedom is the peace that we have all been looking for and are looking for, and the realization of that is the joy of life, the true joy of life. Because the fact of the matter is, the joy that we think that we're looking for from the pleasures of this world are only temporary, not dependable. But the self is infinite and eternal, and its nature is freedom, peace, and joy. Okay?
Yes. Is there an ego in the deep sleep state also? Is the ego persisting even in the deep sleep state?
In the deep sleep state, there is no mind, so there is no ego. It surrenders, or let's say it withdraws into the pure awareness in a natural mode, in a natural way. However, in that natural letting go of the sense of I in the state of deep sleep, which is a way that the body has of coming to rest and rejuvenating itself, recharging itself with energy, as well as the mind having the opportunity to rest from all of its compulsiveness of thought and forming of concepts, beliefs, opinions, and theories, to rest from all of that. This is nature's way of letting us to be free of all of the trials and tribulations of life of the ego. So it's not present in dreamless sleep. It only rises up in the dream state and in this waking state. But it's not present in the deep sleep state. Thank goodness. However, we must realize this directly and immediately for ourselves in the waking state. We might get insights into it in the dream state, but we must fully awaken into this awareness, into this truth, in the waking state. Okay?
Okay. I think, I don't know whether it was Ramana, or I think it was Ramana who told that one should seek a state, one should combine the waking state and the deep sleep state.
Well, when you're able to, by seeing the true nature of the being that we are in the waking state, and are bringing your attention into the stillness and silence that one naturally goes into in the sleep state, that combining, so to speak, when it's intentionally done in the waking state, is what is called samadhi. That's the natural state of being. But it has to happen in the waking state. Okay?
Yes.
All right, anyone else? Or anything else?
Is there any use of the sleep state?
I'm sorry?
Is there any use of the sleep state?
Any use
Yes.
or dues?
Use.
Use
Yes, significance. Any point of the sleep state?
of the sleep state.
Yes.
Well, yes, as I've said, it's the natural way for one to not go crazy.
Oh, I'm sorry, I mean the dream state.
Oh, the dream state.
Yes, yes.
Well, you might say it's also the natural way to not go crazy too. But it's like your built-in, your own natural built-in psychologist or psychiatrist. It's a natural way for consciousness to rearrange itself and put everything back into place where it should be in order to bring harmony and peace to the being. And that's basically what the dream state is for. That's the benefit of it's our built-in psychiatrist, so to speak. Okay?
Yes.
I went to a school event yesterday. It's a school that begins at what in here is like a preschool, so it starts at age 3 and goes up to 5th grade. So the kids are age 3 to 5. And it's a little village school over here for poor children from poor families and orphans, predominantly. And they had their events. They were having relay races and sack races and running with a lemon on a spoon and moving sand and relays and things. So they had some competition. Well, the beginning races were these little itty bitty kids, 3 years old, having running races and frogs. They looked like little frogs. And they just did the race. The teachers were all seeing who was first, second, and third, but the kids were oblivious to it. They just did the race. One little fellow was way behind on the frog race, and the teacher finally stood him up and told him to run. So he ran to the finish line, smiles, full of smiles. It's just the process. And as you watch the kids in the races being a little older, there was more of a competition and a knowing that there was first, second, and third, but didn't seem to still be very competitive. And then they had some races with the parents. And the quality was entirely different. The men ran, and the women ran before the whistle was started, and so half of them were already gone, and then half of them followed, and the other part just stood there looking blankly because it hadn't started. And then there was we call musical chairs in America, where you have chairs in the center, and they have one chair short, and they stop the music, and you have to run and get a chair. Well, the women actually got upset that one of the women was very upset because some other woman hadn't gone far enough in the circle. She was angry, visibly angry. And then when it was later on, they did the staff, and I myself was in the musical chairs. And when it was my turn to not have a chair, I could see that there was either the feeling of disappointment for not having found a chair, and a little bit of that, or there was real gratitude because you didn't have to run around the circle and try to find a chair anymore. So, did you get that? Yeah. So for me, I can see both of those as an option for a feeling, or you just accept what's so. But seeing the progression and how it really is a trained competition and a first, second, and third, and needing that. For these little kids, they didn't care at all. All of it's just trained. And then we go into competition and think our life has to be one of success and winning. And there's something greater gained by that. And how it was very visual in this little village school, because you've been there, and these kids are they're just beings. They're just delightful. Huh? You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes, we learn to compete. It's not necessary to compete. That's what life appears to be, particularly in the Western world. Competition. And yet, in America, I will say in particular, competition is what seems to make it all work, or that's what it's all built on. And yet, do we recognize the lack of compassion in competition? Often. Not always, maybe, but often. The need to excel, the need to win, and this need to win is often due to someone else's losing. We win as someone else loses. And then the winner gets the spoils, so to speak, the prize. And the loser, has to live with the results of not having won. Or maybe the next time he or she can try a little better and have the opportunity. But then to excel is the motivating factor, to achieve, to accomplish. But in that competitive mode, it is always at someone else's loss. fact of the matter is, that's not love. So competition tends to rule out love. Oh, we can call it the love to compete, but that's not the true love. There'd have to be another name for that. The wish, the desire to excel. Just a matter of seeing it without judgment. Don't judge the very thing itself in the seeing of it. Just recognize it for what it is. Let it reveal its nature for what it is. That's actually how it works in the world. Winners have to or require losers, and of course there is a winner with each loser. That's the way it is in duality in the world. So life, in its highest expression, is coming to this realization that we're all actually of the same essence. None greater, none lesser. We're of the same essence. And that's love. That recognition, that recognition, that knowing again as it actually is. That which is as it is. That's love. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you, sir, for your question. Okay, Mel?
My question, it's my last day today. I leave Ramana today, and I just wanted to say thank you for your teaching, and I feel grateful, very grateful for being here and being brought here, so thank you.
Well, very happy to have you. It has been a delight to have you. All right.
I saw something else here, is that when a sense of impatience or, what's another word that I had? Anyway, impatience will work. When a sense of impatience arises, the kind of natural or customary action is to look for the reason for the impatience. But the insight today is it's really looking for the source of the impatience, which is just withdrawing the impatience back into the source. Because there isn't any other reason except for there's been identification.
Yes. Anytime we use the word reason for the so-called solution for anything, we're trying to solve it in the mind. The mind is what makes everything reasonable. The mind is what gives a reason for everything. We tend to live in the notion that everything has a reason. You ever heard that one? There must be a reason. There's a reason for this and a reason for that. Well, the reason that there's a reason, or or the apparent reason that there's a reason, is due to our identification with the mind as being the basis of being. The mind is not the basis of being. It's the basis of duality. Being is prior to duality. All duality is opposition. Good, bad, right, wrong, hot, cold, up, down, left, right. All the dualities are of the mind and are always opposite. Or we can say the trinities, the triads, like the seen and the seer and the process of seeing, the knower and the known and the process of knowing, the doer and the deed and the process of doing. So the triads occurring in time and space, in duality. But the duads, the duality and the trinity of these actions in time and space are themselves not the basis of being, not the basis of pure existence. But it's very seldom seen because we're so identified with the dualities and the trinities, if you will, that we don't recognize that prior to the dualities, the seer is the seen. Both the seen and the seer rise out of the same pure awareness. And we are this pure awareness. The self that we are is the pure awareness. Now, this self that we are is one. When we think in dualities, we think in multiplicities. So many seems to be the basis of being, rather than oneness as the basis of being. Oneness, the basis of being, is the supreme awareness itself, the pure, one, true reality. This is what we all are. This ocean of pure being. Out of this ocean of pure being rises the seeming independent sense of I. This seeming independent sense of I is in fact the meditation of a separate self-identity. This one being takes on the sense of I as an individual being and meditates itself as a separate individual, and then sees the bodies of all other so-called individual separate beings as other, as not I. So out of I simultaneously rises the sense of not I. Not I and I are, in a manner of speaking, coexistent and occur simultaneously. They're just notions. They're appearances. But the truth is, there's only one, out of which this apparent two or many appear. Our not seeing this is what sustains and maintains what we call time and space, or the world of persons, places, and things. The adventure, so to speak, of life as we see it, as we experience it. And paradoxically, it's the play, the dance, the lila, the appearance. It's only appearing to be as we're seeing it. It's not really the basis of truth. Truth is, there's only one, and all of us are that one. And another way we can say it, God dwells in us, as us, and plays the role that each of us are appearing to play. So God is having all of the either the fun or the suffering, however you look at it. God is enjoying the drama or is suffering the drama. So if we surrender our personal, individual sense of being into the pure being of the one awareness that we actually are, we can free ourselves from the drama and be able to see the drama as it is appearing to be, and no longer have to suffer the drama, but can more allow ourselves to enjoy the drama, so to speak. These are just words. The words are pointing to the process for us to look and see for ourselves how the process happens, how it works. All right? Sri Bhagavan Ramana has shared this with those that are open and receptive to receive it, and his explanation of it is so pure and so simple and so direct. You can find it in his collected works that are published by his ashram, or in Truth Revealed, a little booklet. Here it is. The entire story, right here in this little booklet. And there are other little booklets very similar that are of his sharing the simplicity of what appears to be the profundity of how it all is, how it all works. And it's possible for any and all of us to see, understand, and awaken to, and realize directly and immediately for ourselves the truth that Sri Bhagavan is sharing. I might add, this is the one high purpose of life itself, to awaken to and realize in this lifetime the true nature of being as it actually is. I might also add, if we don't awaken to it in this lifetime, we're going to have to eventually. So why not get on with it in this lifetime? That's just the way it works.
We were kind of talking at the table the other day about, you alluded to it, that things that are going on in the world, but just the kind of general growing complexity of life in the world. Kind of away from the simplicity of earlier times maybe. So some benefit of technology and things that we don't have to deal with, but on the other hand, technology and all that we have to deal with this busier, faster life. And what's just occurring is that that's really the play itself. So folks here come, I don't know everybody in this room, but I would imagine pretty much a general statement is that everyone has put life aside to be here in India for an extended period of time, to be able to devote more to this simple quality, to tune attention back and really focus. And so what was just, as you were sharing, what I was seeing is that the more our attention is on what our life should be, rather than seeing this higher purpose, the more complex it's going to get just by its nature. It's just going to keep building, because that's the way it will happen, keeping us more trying to fulfill what we think we need to fulfill in the world, and less to be attending to the highest purpose of withdrawing our attention from the world. Seems to be working in reverse, unless we're very attentive.
Well, life just manifests as what the predominant mood, and like you're saying with technology being on the rise, improving our ways and means of communication with one another, then we can see that the predominant drive of humanity through communication and intention and purpose of those who are in positions and places of political power seem to give rise to the directions and trends of life. Of course, it's always that way and has always been that way, but technology does add to that. It does tend to speed that up. And as a result, if we don't get more and more conscious about what the trends and tendencies are, we are going to speed up the results of that for good or not. There's so much that is occurring in the world that we don't know, that's really behind the scenes, that the masses don't really necessarily know what all of that pertains to. But nonetheless, we're all affected by it in our own way, in a collective consciousness manner of speaking. But even though we're affected by it in a collective sense, in a collective consciousness sense, we can say that, like here in India, in the smaller villages where maybe people are not even conscious about what is going on in the world order, even though they are ultimately can be affected by it, To what extent they happen to be into awakening spiritually to who and what they are, to the true nature of the being. This holds true for any of us. To what extent, like you say, coming to India, those of us who are here, who are coming here on a spiritual quest, to what extent that we are working spiritually to come to a deeper understanding of the true nature of the being that we are, and we do awaken, or to what extent we do awaken, we will be less at the effect of whatever the world order happens to be in the collective sense. Things may get worse before they get better. Unfortunately, I've been saying that one for about 35 years, and sure enough, they're getting a little worse. I don't like to have to say that, but from a collective consciousness point of view, they are. The trends and tendencies are. But it doesn't have to affect us as being if we apply ourselves to a spiritual process of truly awakening to the very truth of who and what we are as spiritual beings. See, we think we're human beings. Well, it appears that we are, but we're not human beings. We're divine beings. And when we awaken to the divinity of the very self that we are, then we no longer have to be at the effect of the collective consciousness of humanity, of a human being. That's the basic and simple truth of the matter. Okay? Yes.
What I feel is really lacking is an kind of design or general outlines from a conscious being of an conscious education of the children and the youth, because everything goes wrong in the youth. We may know somehow, to some extent, to educate children up to 10 years old, or from 10 years and up to 20, or to a person is completely mature. Everything goes wrong. Did I no?
My hearing is, I'm sorry, I have to apologize,
Yeah.
but I just don't hear that well.
No. I'll try to make it louder. I have my.
It's not the loudness, it's my ability to understand what you're saying. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
So what I feel is lacking is an design from an enlightened being of a conscious education.
Impatient?
Education.
What he's, education.
Education.
More of a, from a conscious being, more of a design for education. What he had said earlier, correct me if I'm wrong, Vera,
Yeah.
we do okay maybe up to 10, age 10, but after 10, we really lost it big time.
Yes.
Well, what we call education, based upon Bhagavan's own words, in most cases is learned ignorance. We learn to be ignorant. We don't start from a basis even our educators tend to not appear to start from a basis of consciousness, of understanding of the true nature of being, of the self that we actually are. So they start from the premise that we are body, that we're minds, that who we are is our collected consciousness that we've accumulated through experience throughout our lives. Well, that's not who we are. That's just the collected content of the mind. And here we have all of us with our collected content of the mind, which is what we have experienced. So we base upon our experience who we think we are. But we don't usually ask, who am I that is having this experience? What is the nature of the self? What is the nature of the being that I am that has had and is having this experience in time and space? For the experience in time and space is just the collecting content of the mind. It's not who we are. The collected content of the mind is our, as Bhagavan says, our learned ignorance. And if we base that upon how we now determine how we're going to function as far as the future is concerned, we're just going to stay in this ignorance, and things are not really going to get any better. They're just going to continue to deteriorate over time. And yes, enlightenment would be the way, but the egos of our educators, which is the body-mind itself, are not into inquiring who I am. Most people already think that they know, and they get sort of highly irate if you try to indicate that they don't know who they are. Okay?
Yes, after all, I'm educated.
Yes. Well, thank you all for your patience, for your presence, for being here, and your interest in Aham and what we are. Namaste.
Namaste.